Okay, so we're diving deep today into a case that I think has really captivated a lot of people. And I know it's one that's been requested a lot by our listeners.
Yeah, definitely a case with a lot of mystery and intrigue around it, for sure.
The death of Elisa Lam at the Cecil Hotel back in 2013 in Los Angeles. You sent over this excerpt from Unsolved Crime Tapes, episode 9. And I got to say, watching it just sends chills down your spine.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's so much about this case that is just unsettling. From the very beginning with her disappearance to the discovery of her body, it's just a story that really grabs you.
Yeah, and I think what's really fascinating about this case is not just the tragic outcome, but also the strange circumstances surrounding it, and the fact that even after all these years, there's still so much we don't know for sure.
Totally. I think that's what keeps people coming back to it. It's like a puzzle with missing pieces.
So let's start with the basics, just to set the scene for our listeners who maybe aren't as familiar with the case. Elisa Lam was a 21-year-old Canadian student who was traveling alone in the U.S., and she was staying at the Cecil Hotel in downtown L.A.
Right, and the Cecil Hotel itself has quite a notorious reputation. It's been linked to a lot of, let's say, unsavory incidents over the years.
Definitely has a bit of a dark history, that's for sure. But we'll get into that a little later. So Elisa was last seen on January 31st, 2013. And what really kicked off the whole mystery was the release of that security footage from the hotel elevator. Have you seen it?
Oh yeah, I've seen the footage. It's definitely one of the most bizarre and kind of eerie pieces of video evidence I've ever come across in a case like this.
I mean, it's almost hard to describe to someone who hasn't seen it. She's behaving so strangely in the elevator. Like,
Huh?
she's talking to someone who isn't there, pressing all these buttons, stepping in and out, peeking out into the hallway, and making these really odd hand gestures.
And it's that lack of context that really makes it so creepy, right? We don't know who or what she's reacting to, and the way she's moving, almost like she's trying to hide or avoid something, is just incredibly unsettling.
That's what I think really captured the public's attention, was the eeriness of that footage. It became this kind of viral sensation, and it sparked all sorts of theories about what might have happened to Elisa.
It definitely added to the mystery. Everyone was trying to interpret her actions in the elevator looking for clues, but ultimately it just raised more questions than answers.
So for weeks after she vanished, there were searches and investigations, but no real leads. And then the story takes this really grim turn. About 19 days after she was last seen, hotel guests started complaining about issues with the water.
Yeah, I remember reading about that. It was like low water pressure, and some people were saying the water tasted funny or had a discolored tint to it. Something wasn't right.
And so maintenance workers went up to the roof to check the water tanks, and that's where they made the horrifying discovery. Elisa Lam's body was found inside one of the tanks.
It's just a tragic end to the story, and it raised this huge question that everyone wanted to know the answer to. How did she end up in a locked water tank on the roof of the hotel?
Exactly, and that's really the crux of the mystery, isn't it? The official ruling was accidental drowning, but as the Unsolved Crime Tapes episode pointed out, there were a lot of inconsistencies and things that just didn't add up easily.
I mean, first of all, those water tanks are not easy to get into. They're large, they're heavy, the lids are usually locked, and they're often secured with alarms.
Yeah, the excerpts even mentioned that maintenance crews often need special tools to open those tanks. So the idea that Elisa could have gotten in there on her own, especially if she was in distress or having a mental health episode, just seems implausible to a lot of people.
Right. And that brings us to another key aspect of this case. Elisa's mental health. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and some people believe that her actions in the elevator and ultimately her death could be attributed to a mental health crisis.
And it's important to acknowledge that mental health can play a role in these kinds of situations. People's behavior can become unpredictable, especially during a severe episode.
Absolutely, but even considering that the physical challenges of accessing that water tank remain a major hurdle, you know, how do you reconcile the possibility of a mental health episode with the very real logistical difficulties of getting into that tank?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And then, of course, there's the whole history of the Cecil Hotel itself, which adds another layer of intrigue to this story.
Oh, yeah. The Cecil has a long and rather disturbing past. It's been the site of numerous suicides and other violent crimes. Some people even call it the Hotel of Death. It's definitely got a reputation.
Yeah, and that reputation has fueled a lot of speculation about foul play. Some people believe that Elisa might have been the victim of something sinister that happened within the hotel itself.
When you look at the hotel's past and you consider the circumstances surrounding Elisa's death, it's not hard to see why people would jump to those kinds of conclusions.
And then you've got even more, how how should I put it, unconventional theories that have emerged around this case, some involving the supernatural.
Yeah, like the connection to Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, who was known to have stayed at the Cecil during his crime spree in the 80s.
It's almost like the hotel itself has become this sort of magnet for dark energy or something.
Yeah.
It's got this eerie aura that just seems to attract these kinds of events, and it definitely feeds into the mystery of what happened to Elisa Lam.
I think that's what's so fascinating about this case. It touches on so many different levels. You've got the human element, the tragedy of a young life lost, the mystery of the circumstances surrounding her death. And then you've got this backdrop of the Cecil Hotel with its dark history and its strange connection to these unusual occurrences.
So ultimately, despite the official ruling of accidental drowning, the case remains open in the minds of many people, and it continues to generate debate and speculation.
And that's the power of a case like this.
Hmm.
Even with all the information we have, there are still so many unanswered questions, and it really leaves you wondering what truly happened to Elisa Lam.
Absolutely, and I think that's a good place to leave it for our listeners to ponder as well.
Mhm.
Given all the different theories and possibilities we've discussed, what single aspect of this case do you find most compelling?
And why might that be the key to unlocking the truth about this enduring mystery?